Hello and welcome back to LPR's Delivery. In today's episode, we'll be continuing with aircraft technical problems and talking about engines, APUs, and fires. First of all, we'll get started with engines and APUs, which, as you know, is the auxiliary power unit, which is the extra small engine usually located in the back of an aircraft that serves as a backup for power when the engines are not running. Let's get started with a Japanese pilot.
Japan Air 647. We are experiencing a surge from our number one engine. We are trying to keep it inside the parameters. We'll keep you advised.
Speedbird 742. We're experiencing a surge from our number one engine. We're trying to keep it inside the parameters. We'll keep you advised.
The word here is surge. A surge is a sudden increase in the flow of electrical power through a system. So for example, an electrical surge damaged the computer's disk drive. So electrical surges are very common, which is why we have these. A surge protector. So you see these are power strips or power bars, but most power strips nowadays, inside them, have a surge protector, which is like a fuse or something that in the case that there's an extra power or a power surge or a power spike that comes through the cable, it will protect your devices that are plugged into the sockets. Likewise, on an aircraft, though, we see here from Wikipedia about a compressor stall. A compressor stall is a local disruption of the airflow in a gas turbine or turbocharger compressor. It's related to a compressor surge, which is a complete disruption of the flow through the compressor. So a compressor surge is when the airflow is totally interrupted going through the engine, which obviously results in the engine not functioning properly. So a surge is very similar to a stall. Next.
Bangkok Air 237. We need to keep our speed up to try a windmilling start. We will need to fly 300 knots to keep us in the start envelope.
So the phrase here is a windmilling start. Start, of course, means to start the engine. Usually when we start an engine, we can use the APU, which is powered by a battery. So a battery starts the APU, and the APU starts the engines. However, sometimes the engine may go out mid-flight, and they can use the wind coming through the engine, going through the rotor blades here, to naturally produce the power or get the air going through the compression chamber here to start the engine in that way. Likewise, this is called a what? Yeah, this is called a windmill. So just like windmills have wind going through and turning the rotor blades to produce power, we can do the same thing with an engine. The way that this is usually done is that the aircraft will execute a dive. This will increase the speed, therefore increasing the speed of the rotor blades turning and giving it the compressed air it needs to start the engine again. A windmilling start. Next.
Bangkok Air 237. We need to do a cross-bleed start on stand. Request to run up one engine to 70% power for 3 minutes.
Japan Air 647. We need to do a cross-breed start on stand. Request to run up one engine to 70% power for 3 minutes.
This phrase is a cross-bleed start. Now, like we said before, usually you can start the engines from the APU. We can see in this diagram that the APU can be used to produce the air, produce the energy to start the engines, Or sometimes they can use the huffer cart, which the huffer cart looks like this, which essentially produces the compressed air and sends it to the engines to start. However, some airlines have a policy to use a cross-bleed start, which means first you can start one engine, either from the APU or from a huffer cart or something else, and then using the bleed air that's being produced by this engine and reroute it to the other engine and using that air to start this engine. So that would be called a cross-bleed start. And some airlines do this to save fuel and maybe do this during the pushback or something like that.
Bangkok Air 237. We've got some high engine vibration. We're going to run some checks and we'll keep you advised.
Speedbird 742. We've got some high engine vibration. We're going to run some checks and we'll keep you advised.
So the word here is vibration. Vibration is a noun for the verb vibrate. So just like your smartphone or your tablet has a vibrate setting, or bzz, 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 engines might also vibrate due to many things. It could be from turbulence or also could be for problems with the air intake, etc. And engine vibration is very common, especially when there is revved up high. Next, we'll talk about fires.
Japan Air 647. The fire service report that the fire has been extinguished. We would like to disembark the passengers here on the taxiway. Request mobile aircraft steps.
Speedbird 742. The fire services report that the fire has been extinguished. We would like to disembark the passengers here on the taxiway. Request mobile aircraft steps.
The word here is extinguished. And just like in the last lesson, extinguish means to put out. So here we see the firefighters are trying to extinguish the fire.
Japan Air 647. Abandoning takeoff. We have an engine fire and very hot brakes. Request fire trucks.
Bangkok Air 237. Abandoning takeoff. We have an engine fire and very hot brakes. Request fire trucks.
Here the word is abandoning. Abandon can mean many things, but in this case it means to abandon something is to stop doing something, especially before it's finished. So in this case, the takeoff is not finished, so they stop trying to take off. A common use of the word abandon is when we're talking about boats or ships. So if a ship is sinking, usually the captain or someone will scream, "Abandon ship," which means to leave the ship before it's finished sinking. So likewise here, abandon ship or abandoning takeoff.
Japan Air 647. Stopping the pushback. We have a tailpipe fire reported by the tug crew. Request fire trucks.
The word here is tailpipe fire. A tailpipe fire is simply just a fire that happens here inside the engine towards the backside where the combustion happens. This actually happens fairly frequently, mainly just due to excess fuel being in the chamber. And it might look like something like this, where you could see some fire or some smoke exiting from the back of the engine. Actually, from what I understand, this situation is fairly common and not too serious because this part of the engine is made from a really high quality steel which can resist these high temperatures. However, in serious situations, it might cause damage to the flaps or other parts of the aircraft, especially on the wing. Usually the procedure is not to use fire trucks to put these out, but simply to stop adding fuel to the engines, and eventually the fire will go out by itself. So this might not be the best suggestion to request fire trucks, but in some cases it might be.
L China 708. The smoke is becoming very thick. We have to make forced landing. We can make the airfield.
Bangkok Air 237. The smoke is becoming very thick. We have to make a forced landing. We can't make the airfield.
So the word here is thick, which is an adjective that's describing the smoke. So thick smoke might look like this. So this would be thick smoke in the cabin, which means it's heavy or dense. Here there's also smoke in the cabin, but not too serious, so this would be the opposite of thick, which is thin. So thick smoke and thin smoke. Likewise, we can talk about thick and thin with fog. Here we can see thick fog over the city, and here we see some thin fog over the field. Likewise, we actually talk about thick and thin with hair. So here we see thick hair, and here we see thin hair.
Japan A647. We have a fire detector fault, but we also have reports from our cabin crew of fire coming from engine number 4. Request fire service to standby.
Speedbird 742, we have a fire detector fault, but we also have reports from our cabin crew of fire coming from engine number 4. Request fire services to stand by.
Here the phrase is fire detector fault. As we know, fault means a problem, and a fire detector comes from the word detect. To detect something means to discover or notice something, especially something that is not easy to see or hear. So maybe something like a secret or a mystery, something that's difficult to see. For example, Sherlock Holmes. What's his job? Right. He's a detective. So detective comes from detect, because he needs to find and discover things that are not easy to see. Likewise, sometimes a fire might be difficult to see or difficult to notice, so we have fire detectors in most buildings. Likewise, aircraft, of course, have engine fire detectors, which are devices that will tell the pilots by some flashing lights or something like that, or alarms, if there is an engine fire.
Bangkok Air 237. We have a wheel well fire warning. We need to reduce speed to lower the landing gear as per our checklists.
The word here is wheel well fire warning. Even on cars we have these. So here's a truck. Obviously this is the wheel. So this area where the wheel is inserted is called the wheel well. Likewise, aircraft have wheel wells. This is where the landing gear is retracted into the body of the aircraft. And sometimes a fire can erupt inside the wheel well. And when this happens, of course, there are sensors or detectors in the wheel well, and the pilot will be notified by an alarm. And that's it for today's lesson on aircraft technical problems. Now we've done 4 lessons on aircraft technical problems, mostly related to vocabulary. So after this video, I'll also be posting some exercises to help you refresh this vocabulary. Please remember that in order to remember vocabulary, you need to use it and see it again and again and again. So please remember to complete the exercise to help refresh your memory about these terms. And we'll see you next time on LPR's Delivery. ขอบคุณครับ สวัสดีครับ